Okay, thank you, Gail, for joining us today. I am going to read aloud the rules for this vetting committee that we're going to be doing today. These simple rules: no one is allowed to be in the room except the vetting panel and the candidate. All electronics allowed in the room shall be turned off except laptops used by the vetting committee and the video recorders provided by the vetting committee. Cell phones or voice recorders shall be turned off in the room. No written material or notes will be taken by the candidate. North Texas Council vetting panel members and candidate agree that all questions and responses at this vetting session are to remain confidential property until videos are uploaded and considered public information on the North Texas Council website and/or an alternate website. Verbal questions will be asked today, and verbal responses to those questions will be given with 1 or 2 minute responses for each question. The candidate will receive a copy of her vetting interview recording, upon which time the video is posted on the North Texas Council website or an alternate website. And we want to thank you for joining us here today, Gail. We will now go around the table and introduce ourselves very briefly. So would you like to start?
I'm Babs Millward from Rowlett.
I'm Barbara Harless from Murphy, Texas.
Janie Britton from Garland.
And Liz Moser from Garland.
And now Gail Spurlock, we would like to thank you for coming here today and spending your precious time with us. Would you please give us about a 2-minute self-bio and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Gail Spurlock. I'm running for State Board of Education District 12. I'm a mother of 3 grown children, an IT consultant for the past, about 20 years. I'm a small business owner in that regard. My ex-husband had a home improvements company, and I was the business manager for that. I've worked probably in 50 or 60 different companies over the years, all different kinds of companies, all different kinds of people, doing problem solving, business process engineering, software development, technical writing. Oh, thank you. About 10 years ago, after 9/11, I started studying world history to see how we got where we were. That led me into studying politics, current events, and some philosophy and politics. And I've been in the Tea Party since I found the first one that I found here was up in Bedford or Grapevine in March of 2009. And I've been with the Tea Parties ever since and gotten more and more knowledgeable and come to the conclusion that education is the most important part of what our culture does. And our education system needs improvement. We've had some marvelous standards passed recently. They need to be protected. There is a real all-out effort right now to get either a liberal majority or enough Republican swing votes to reopen and roll back some of those standards. We had some horrible press in the newspaper belittling the work that's been done, and it really was a huge step forward. But there's people who don't want us to move forward, and we need to defeat them, and we need to get our country back on really sound grounding. This is an important position to protect the standards already passed and to ensure that the rest of the standards are just as high caliber. And that's what I like to do.
Thank you.
This is your first question. You have 1 minute to answer. You may have already answered it in your intro, but go ahead again. What made you decide to run for a position on the Texas State Board of Education, and what is your primary goal? When I found out how liberal leaning and how frequently the people who are my opponents have voted with the Democrats against the conservative agenda. I've looked up their records, and that's why I'm running. I don't tell people that because I want you to vote for me. That's why I'm running, because the conservative standards are at risk right now. Thank you.
Question number 2. The Senate Bill number 6, which became law at the last Texas legislative session, defines open source instructional materials as electronic instructional materials available for download at no charge to a student. With Senate Bill 6, why do you think that eligible institutions, including certain research universities and members of the American Association of Universities, are allowed to submit open source instructional materials for adoption without the State Board of Education being able to reject these materials?
Because the state board has standards. There are people who don't want that. And it's really pretty creepy. There's been a lot of, frankly, socialist indoctrination going on in our schools for a long time. And I'm not afraid to come out and say it. I've seen it, I've experienced it, and it's not good. Socialism is old, old, old. It's just tyranny with a populist face. And that is being sold to our children. And a lot of these professors, they openly profess it. We have 60-some members of Congress who are socialists, self-proclaimed socialists in the Democrat Party. So that's why they did it. And we need to object to that. We need to oppose. But, that's going to take parents. That's going to take individuals stepping up to the plate and getting educated. I'm stepping up to the plate here and now in this position to do my best to support you and all of the citizens of this district in taking back control of our lives, our children, and our schools. It's up to us. That's what self-government is. And if we don't want to do the work that takes, we will not have self-government and we will not be worthy of it. I'm doing my part to help, and I hope you will too.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes to answer this question.
Mm-hmm.
With the passage of Senate Bill 6, local school districts will be given their own allotment of funds and more flexibility to purchase textbooks, open source instructional materials, and computer equipment, as well as pay for salaries and training of technology personnel, with less oversight by the State Board of Education. Do you see this as a good thing? If yes, why? If not, why not?
If the parents are closely involved, I'm fine with it. But the parents need to look at that material. Maybe I'm a little torn. The one thing is, most parents are already working, and they're raising a family, and there's only so much that they can do. They cannot read every book and examine everything. They need to get more involved, but and so I'm really torn on it. I like seeing more local control, a lot. I think that's really important. But it only works if people are involved, personally.
All right. You have 1 minute to answer this question, Gail.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Ratliff was an active lobbyist when he ran for the State Board of Education, but this information didn't come out until after he was elected. Have you ever been a lobbyist, or do you have any other potential conflicts of interest that others might perceive as influencing your State Board of Education service? 1 minute.
I have never been a lobbyist. I have been a parent, and that does influence my service. But I think it should. I'm also very desirous of knowing what other parents think. Things are changing rapidly, and we need to all stay abreast of the changes. But as far as lobbyists, no. I intend with this position to become a bit of a lobbyist to the House of Representatives and the Texas Senate. They're pulling a few scams over on the education system, and we need to stop it.
Thank you. Okay, you have 2 minutes to answer this question. Education Week, June 2010, states that Democrats and some Republicans, including Texas State Senator Gail Spurlock, plan to push bills in 2013 that will rein in the SBOE, State Board of Education Authority, or abolish it altogether. This is not just a Texas issue. In Iowa, Republican Senator Brad Zahn introduced Bill 2371 to eliminate Iowa's Department of Education and the state school board. This bill moves authority to regents and councils that are unelected and unaccountable to the people. What are your thoughts on this, and what will you do to keep the authority of the elected State Board of Education?
I will make a lot of noise. The only reason the State Board of Education needs a lot of authority right now is because we are the only elected officials representing the people involved in the school system. Any effort to eliminate, if we have a Department of Education or the State Board of Education, that could probably be eliminated at some point, but not as long as there's a U.S. Department of Education. What's going on here is by eliminating that state level of control, which was the same thing they did with the 17th Amendment. Senators used to be elected by the state legislature. With general election, that's gone. The states were completely emasculated by that amendment. And we're seeing some of the effects of that now. And this is another effort to pull the same stunt once again. I'm running as an elected official representing the people. We have a little bit of expertitis in our society right now. As long as someone is an expert, you just do what they say and you don't even think about it. Well, experts sometimes are wrong, even with good intentions. We've got to stop relying upon experts and resume relying upon ourselves. And until the citizens are doing it, we must not get rid of the State Board of Education, because we are the only people who can rein in the administrators who really do want to subjugate us. They already live privileged lifestyles. They're exempt from, oh heck, they just cut all the school funding. The administrators aren't being touched. They're laying off the service providers, teachers. It's absurd. They're a protected class, and we're apparently annoying them, and that's a good thing.
Thank you.
This is question number 6. You have 2 minutes to answer this question. What 3 pieces of legislation related to education would you like to see pushed in the upcoming legislative session?
We need to repeal the state constitutional amendment that takes away the state board, that reduces the state board's control over the permanent school fund. That's part of the weakening. And I hadn't really thought about introducing new legislation yet. So that's the only one, is that I know that's a bad one. And I haven't looked closely enough to have any other things that I would like to introduce or suggest to the legislation.
You have 1 minute to answer this question. Do you believe charter schools should be allowed to promote other cultures over American culture? And do you support allowing charter schools to use the permanent school fund to guarantee construction bonds? Why or why not?
Okay, first question, I don't think that public schools should be promoting culture at all. We shouldn't even need to promote. If we need to promote our own culture, that's a problem in our society. And it's not the school's job to fix all the problems in society. Job of schools is to educate children. It is the job of parents, clergy, local clubs and groups, neighborhoods, to inculcate the culture. To have foreign culture promoted is definitely a no-no. It should be absolutely prohibited. Okay, and what was the second part of the question?
Do you support allowing charter schools to use the permanent school fund to guarantee construction bonds?
No. We need to get more free market, not less free market.
All right. Gail, you have 2 minutes to answer this question. During the Social Studies Curriculum Standards Review in 2009-2010, the State Board of Education voted to make changes which some consider to be controversial. Do you support the changes made or not, and why?
I absolutely support the changes made. I was on the world history team. Our history has been compromised for the past century. And I understand when people were irate and said, oh my gosh, you're rewriting history. No, we were restoring history. But there weren't enough people in the public who were well educated enough to recognize that. Those of us who dug into it, I was horrified at the false information that I had and the missing information from my own education. I didn't know, for instance, that when the Pilgrims set up their little community, well, first of all, they were required to be communist. That was in their charter. Communism is that old. It was mandatory. And as a result of that, half the people died in the first year. They opened up the Bible and said, oh, if you don't work, you don't eat. They turned it into a free market system, and they took off and flourished from there. Additionally, they had a rule where they were fined $25, and $25 was a lot more in 1642 than it is today. The parents were fined $25 if they failed to teach their children to read. And the reason was they wanted the children to be able to read the Bible for themselves so that no one could ever interpret it for them.